Let's do something positive for once. I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite comedies, Death at a Funeral. And no, not the shitty American remake, I'll get to that later. Now before I start, I just wanted to be clear that I'm not calling this film a masterpiece. I mean, to be honest, I'd probably only give it like a 7 out of 10 overall, but a lot of my favorite films are 7 out of 10. Films that I find hugely entertaining and recommendable while still recognizing its flaws and its proximity to the top with regards to every other film ever made. I think it's important to keep in mind, especially when rating comedies and horror movies. It happens a lot where these types of movies don't try to do anything big, and that's okay. Sometimes a film is more suited to being pretty simple. Now I'm going to try to stay away from spoilers as much as possible. I will talk about some of the details you need to know early on, and yes, I know this film is from a decade ago, but if this video convinces anyone to go see it, I still don't want them knowing everything going in. The film is directed by Frank Oz, who is also responsible for other favourites of mine such as Little Shop of Horrors and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, as well as the voice of Yoda. The film is about an uptight English family gathering to mourn the death of a family member, specifically the main character Daniel's father. Daniel is a hopeful writer living in the shadow of his very famous brother Robert. All he wants is a dignified send-off for his dad, which unfortunately gets continuously hindered by accidental LSD ingestion and blackmail. Despite the film's over-the-top premise, the film does well to stay away from the type of unreal excess you might find in, say, an American comedy.
Back off, buddy! Oh, you gonna bring a gat to a funeral?
The performances and reactions are believable and feel realistic given the circumstances. It doesn't have any scene where the main character has to fumble over his words coming up with an excuse for weird behaviour. Whenever those types of scenes are included, it nearly always feels like no one in that situation would be convinced by it. It feels too over the top and unlike someone trying to be subtle. Or during heightened situations, people actually appear to be trying to diffuse the tension rather than be funny, which I feel is a pretty common difference between good comedies and bad comedies, whether or not it feels like the actors are trying to be funny. When it feels like the actors are in on the joke, it ruins the joke.
The thing is that we know that we're being funny, but you can't let the audience know for 1 second that you're trying to be funny, not for 1 second.
The fact that there's no big superstars in the film adds to the believability of this just being normal people trying to deal with extremely abnormal circumstances. Except for maybe Alan Tudyk? Tudyk?
The one and only Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk. With how mental the happenings are, it would have been easy for this film to lean on that for comedy and to drive the plot along, as well as allow it to carry the film. But the contained situations that generate the comedy really carry themselves. It doesn't rely heavily on outrageous things happening to be the source of the laughs, and the opening scene alone should give you a good idea for the tone of the film.
Who's this?
Pardon me?
That's not my father.
Oh shit, we've taken the wrong one.
The film pokes fun at the obligation to keep a stiff upper lip, a trait associated strongly with Britishness. In British society, especially with formal events and family events, a certain level of keeping up appearances is expected.
Of course I don't mind. All right. Yeah, don't worry. All right. No, it's fine, I promise. All right, we'll see you soon. Okay, bye. Shit!
Sometimes to the exclusion of emotion or understanding. Attempting to keep up appearances in the face of adversity is pretty much the definition of keeping a stiff upper lip, and it's pushed to its limits in this film, while also poking fun at British snobbishness.
Oh, don't put your hand there, dear, you'll leave smudge marks.
Also worth noting is that everyone in the film is so distracted, mainly with themselves. The self-centeredness displayed by nearly all the characters is no coincidence. The brother Robert promised to pay for half the funeral, yet insists he's skint, despite paying extra for first-class seats on the plane over from New York.
I guess that's the thing about first class. It doesn't matter how much you pay for the ticket. If the plane crashes, you're all going to end up dead.
Pretty clearly demonstrating he was thinking more about himself and his own comfort rather than his dead father at the time. Justin shows up to the funeral of a family that isn't his to try to hit on Martha, who he has had a one-night stand with ages ago and who's currently in a relationship.
You look nice.
I'm dressed for a funeral.
Yeah.
Justin seems to be the one who's most blatantly there just for himself and routinely shafts the friend he came with. He convinces himself that he's not self-centered because he cares about Martha, but even then, it's only for selfish reasons.
I mean, I care about you.
No, Justin, you care about you. You care about me in relation to how I affect you. There's a difference.
Howard's first lines are telling of just how self-centered his thinking is.
God, I hate funerals, don't you? Really, they're just so depressing.
Again, only relating to how they make him feel. He spends most of the film worrying about a small mark he has on his wrist, believing it to be a serious illness.
Like the discoloration on my wrist that I keep telling you about. Look at it. It's fucked.
He asks about it to several people at the funeral, never taking into account what they're doing or whether they have the time for his useless health questions.
How are you feeling, son?
Hello, Doctor. I've got the skin discoloration. I've had it for a couple of weeks now. It's just not going anywhere.
Even when he attempts to console the grieving widow, he only ends up going off on a tangent about death.
Blood, you honestly would not believe how much, just spurting.
And Peter crashes the funeral to blackmail a family in a time of mourning because he feels like he didn't get what he deserved.
Don't you think I deserve something?
Even Daniel's eulogy starts to become more about himself and wanting to live up to his brother rather than be about the deceased.
Every single bloody person wants Robert to do the eulogy. He was my father too, wasn't he? I'm just entitled to do the bloody eulogy.
It's funny that on a day that's meant to be about one specific person, everyone can only think about themselves.
What is going on? She stole my parking space. What do you mean she stole your parking space? This is a funeral. Behave yourself.
As such, the film is barely about the man in the coffin. Most of the plot revolves around different things that just so happen to be on the day of his funeral. In terms of the actual filmmaking, everything is pretty much as good as it needs to be. The directing isn't too flashy and keeps things pretty simple, but as it's a film mainly centered around the diverse set of characters, it doesn't really need to be anything more than that. It does a great job of laying out the geography of the house and then sits back and just allows you to take in the drama without any distractions. It stays away from the common comedy sin of playing silly music to tell you when it's supposed to be funny, and in fact has barely any music at all. The film is quite witty and trusts the audience to be with the plot enough to get the context. Overall, the film keeps everything relatively unpredictable and entertaining. Some bits are predictable, but overall I think it does a good job of veering off in an unexpected direction. As such, it still remains one of my favourite films purely on entertainment value and the comedic quality of the actors.
Simon? Was there a dog in here just now?
What?
The performances and downplayed reactions makes it feel very genuine, and the individual problems make it feel very human.
Keep me around. You cannot blame me for this.
Which makes it very effective as a black comedy.
But what's going to happen? Is he going to die?
No. Shouldn't think so.